It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how we doing?
Good, man. It's good to get to the Steelers facility today. Talk to Mike and Omar. Learn some things, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll see if I feel like that we've learned anything when I ask you. Because I'll be honest, work was pretty busy today. Missed a lot of what was said.
All right.
So I'm going to be learning along with the audience here in terms of what really came out of today. 48 hours before the NFL draft, which is just crazy to say. I don't know why it snuck up on me
I
this year,
feel
man.
like this is closer to the draft than it's been in the past.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Like this press conference.
They're okay. They're available. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like I feel like it's closer to the draft. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I can't think back. I just feel like the draft in general it came out of nowhere. It really snuck up on me. Did nowhere near the amount of preparation that I typically do, which I'm upfront about. I feel like I'm not as confident in a lot of things as I typically am. But here we are. We'll see how things shake out. But I'm gonna have a lot of questions for you, I feel like, as we kind of go through this. But from their availability today, we're going to talk about a lot of that. A couple questions to get to from the YouTube community as well. But Alan, what did we learn today, if anything? Start wherever you want.
I mean, a lot of this is stuff that either we kind of already thought or had already said at the owners' meetings, but Omar reiterating that they're going to get two quarterbacks between now and the start of the regular season. It still seems like the plan is to draft one and sign Aaron Rodgers. No real movement on the signing Aaron Rodgers part. Talked a little bit with Mike Tomlin about just the changes in college football and how that has impacted his draft approach, which is interesting, but not like news breaking. Omar Khan said he thinks it's a good quarterback class.
Yeah, okay, that is one of the things. That is one of the things that I saw. Not something that I can say that I necessarily agree. I think if it was a good quarterback class, we'd be having a different conversation about their ability to get one that we would presume is kind of the upper tier of quarterbacks within this class staying at their current pick. I don't know. Just my take on it.
I don't think it's an awful quarterback class. I don't think it's.
I don't think it's. Yeah, right. I agree. I also don't think it's 2024.
Like it's definitely not great. Yeah, I kind of disagree with good. I do think there is like some interesting depth. Like I think guys like Tyler Shook and Quinn Ewers and Will Howard are probably more interesting than the after day one quarterbacks we've gotten in a little while.
Although I will say that
I think the one thing that I will say better than like Sam Howell and Spencer Rattler.
Okay, well, Spencer Rattler is actually the name that I was going to bring up because I think he's kind of within the same vein as the Quinn Ewers of the class. Where like really Tolsey was highly touted going in, like when he started his college football career. And then by the time that he came out on the other side of it, he was like, did Spencer Rattler go in round 3 or did he have to wait until day
4? I think.
Okay. So yeah, he waited till day 3 to go, which I assume is going to end up being the same thing with Quinn here. I would kind of have those two within the same space, but yeah, I mean, I agree. Like there's probably guys that are more intriguing to me within this class than 5th round. Okay.
Yeah.
There's going to be guys that I think there's some things to work with. Here's what I'll say. This is probably the best way to put it. I think more guys are going to come out of this class that are at least backups in the NFL.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I agree with that. Because I think you got like 3 or 4 guys that are pretty sure to be like decent backups to average starting quarterbacks. Like, I don't think there's a lot of stars here. In fact, there may not be any stars here. But I think there's guys that are going to play.
And I understand like the QB tax thing, but that's why I keep going back to like Cam Ward. I like Cam Ward. Certainly think that he's an NFL starter and a guy that can be like a top half of the league starter. But like I just don't view him as like a number one overall pick in most years. But I get like QBs are going to get pushed up. It's just if I'm a Titans fan this year, and I know that like you got to push the envelope and take shots on quarterback when they're there. I don't know how I would feel about taking Cam Ward over Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter if I'm a Titans fan.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I'm just a little surprised that it doesn't seem like they've entertained the idea of trading down at all.
Mm-hmm. And like people have tried to make that a discussion, but it seems like it's not actually something the team's done. Like it's a media driven thing because we're getting close to the draft or whatever that they try to like.
Yeah, especially with like the edge rusher market being like, I would be trying to get ahead of Cleveland to get Abdul Carter if I was an edge rusher needy team, but it doesn't seem like anybody is.
You mentioned the edge rusher market. I want to bring up a thought that I had as it pertains to the quarterback market. I was laying in bed last night and I'm like really trying to wrap my head around the whole Shedeur Sanders thing. To be fully on board with it, should he be there at 21? Again, going back to like the QB tax thing, you have him rated higher as a player. So obviously you think 21, that'd be a very good pick for the Steelers. I think it's a good pick, but he came in as my number 34 player in the draft class. To me though, what it comes down to, you talked about the edge market, looking at the quarterback market, we know how they get paid. I don't have a question about him returning investment on a rookie contract, especially at number 21, think that that's a good pick and he would be able to return that investment. The question for me, and this is like if things go well, so this shouldn't even be like a thought for me, but it was last night, is what happens once that rookie contract is up and it comes time to pay him? Because we've seen the way that the quarterback market has exploded. Is that where it becomes like you're probably paying more than he is worth as a player, being a good player at the position, not great player at the position?
Yeah, no, I think that is a valid concern. Like you do seem like if you draft Shedeur Sanders, you're headed for Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, where it's like, is he a good quarterback? Yes. Is he worth what he's being paid? Probably not. Like,
for question. Yeah.
Yeah, like
it doesn't because it seems like we've kind of gotten rid of like I don't know who the first quarter. I don't know if it was Kirk Cousins. Like looking back at the history of quarterback contracts when this happened, but like those mid-tier QB contracts, this really don't seem to exist anymore. Like,
yeah, and I think it's because you have this glut of guys that were already overpaid that are now available because they're getting cut. And so then the teams don't have to pay the mid-tier. Like the mid-tier has gotten overpriced, and then the replacement for the mid-tier is the cheap rebound guy.
Yeah. But again, that should not be a thought that's entering my mind before we even draft the guy. But it was last night.
Let me say this:
if things go well,
get that far, if you get to year 6 and
things have
you
gone
feel
pretty
like
well.
you overpaid for Shedeur Sanders on contract 2. Things have probably gone pretty well compared to like the possibilities of the outcomes there.
Sure. Yeah. And that's the other side of it is if we're even having that conversation, what type of success did we have on his rookie contract to even be having that conversation?
The other thing about Shedeur is he's a fairly young guy, but he's played a lot of college football. So like, he does have adjustments to make, but it's not like this Jalen Milroe style project where you're like, well, he's definitely not playing the first year or two. Like, this is going to take a long time. Like, it's not hard to envision Shedeur Sanders having an amount of success on a rookie contract.
Yeah.
Because of how much he's played in college football.
I wanted to get your take on something that Derek said to me. He wasn't on here Friday. I guess it would have been the previous one on here. But he had a take regarding Shedeur, and I just wanted to get your thought on this because there's like not really any facts behind it or anything like that. I guess it's just a belief in the person that is accompanying the player. He said he just feels like he's the type of guy to overexceed projection. Like there's just something about him where he'll be able to overcome the physical limitations and the tools. I don't know. Do you agree with that? Is there any merit to that in your mind, or what would be behind that thought?
I try very hard not to fall into this line of thinking, because I think it's dangerous to try to predict. And I think we get it wrong even when it's pretty obvious. Like, I covered Kenny Pickett in college. I would have told you I thought that Kenny Pickett had a very high floor as a passer, and he did. But that also that like he would be a guy that would be a positive as a leader. And it turns out that was not only not true, it was the opposite of true. And and I was pretty close to that situation. Now you're talking about a player that I've never even met.
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard to make those characterizations. Like, I think he has some like, I think the fact that you are Dion's kid probably means like some of the pitfalls of young quarterbacks are not going to be of you just young star players in general. Like, he's going to sign a contract for a lot of money. It's not going to be new money to him. Okay, like, you're not having to worry about him like, going out there and causing trouble with his buddies because he's got a fat wallet. Like, he's had one since he was 12. So, or since he had a wallet, whatever. So like that's not going to be a problem. Like, I just think you can talk yourself into a lot of things, but I don't know how many facts there are to be had there. I think in general, I've heard good things about his demeanor. But that's, again, like, it's just so hit or miss.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can understand where the take was coming from. But again, without knowing really having ever had a conversation with him,
I just think he's a player that has gotten already in college, has done a good job of like getting the most out of his athletic abilities. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see a wide spread on what you think of Shedeur Sanders, because if you care more about the athletic traits, the physical tools, you're not going to be super high on him. I think he's a guy where like coaches like him more than scouts do, because you look at the traits and you're like, none of this is that impressive. But then you look at the results and you put the results in some context and you're like, oh, well, some of this is pretty neat. Like, and I think that's, he's in many ways, he's the very opposite of Jalen Milroe in this draft class, where like Milroe has all the potential in the world. It does literally everything you could ever ask a quarterback to do physically, but the results when he throws the ball are ugly. Sanders is kind of the opposite, right? Like, he doesn't have those traits, but he kind of gets the job done anyway. There's been a lot of those guys over the years that will have that paradigm and do okay. There are others that don't. It's not, a slam dunk one way or the other, but I think it's why you see a wide sort of spread depending on who you're talking to about Shedeur Sanders.
I didn't expect to spend this much time on Shedeur Sanders yet again, and I apologize for people that are sick of hearing about quarterbacks, but something else popped in my mind here that I wanted to get your opinion on. This wasn't a question that we had on here. Again, it just popped in my mind. But like, we're sitting here talking about it, and I was just curious as to your thought. If you feel like we talked about like there being a clear pivot leading up to here, and maybe it was they got new information and all of a sudden felt like Shedeur Sanders was going to be able to fall to them and he would be available for them to select. Do you think it was a misstep to not have shown more interest earlier in the process and they should have gone about this pre-draft stuff differently than they did? Or do you feel like they're just kind of just like a victim of the circumstance with the way that things played out?
Ask me again on Monday.
Okay. All right.
It's hard to tell if they make what I consider to be a mistake at quarterback. I think that could be a thing that you could attribute it to, but we'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that's possible, but hey, we've all crammed for a test and then got an A, right? Like, like it's like not always, the most amount of preparation. Sometimes a last-minute rush can get the job done. So I think very much TBD. I did want to mention, just from like the press conference today, Mike Tomlin was pretty elaborative about Shedeur Sanders' visit to the Steelers. He talked about it specifically, which I honestly can't ever remember him doing.
Well, did he get asked about it, or did he just?
He was asked about, he was asked about first his relationship with Dion, and then was asked about the visit, which he gave a specific answer to. I asked him about the idea of, Shedeur having had Dion as his coach for his entire life, and what he made of that dynamic, and he gave a good answer to that. I can't ever remember Mike Tomlin talking so elaboratively about one prospect in a pre-draft interview ever. And maybe it's happened. I mean, I know they talked like pretty at length about Pickett because it was pretty obvious they were interested in him. But maybe since then, that was the last time I remember them talking so much about a specific prospect.
Okay, follow up on that, and then I promise we'll move on to something else. But does that say anything to you about that? Like, because would they be openly talking about it as much if they really wanted him to be? Like, do you think there's potential a smoke screen there, or like what?
I'll just say this: I think if Mike Tomlin came out of that meeting thinking I don't like Shedeur Sanders and I don't want to draft him, those answers would have been different.
Okay,
doesn't mean he's going to.
Yeah,
like there's other factors, but I think if the feeling about that visit had been negative, that's not the way those questions would have been answered. So I know there was like some reporting out there that was the case. I'm kind of not, at least from Mike Tomlin's perspective. And that's the other thing you got to remember too, is like you hear reports about things in the draft, and it's like the Steelers weren't happy with Shedeur Sanders, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, who do you mean when you say the Steelers? Because like, maybe Tom Arth just hates the guy and thought it was like the worst interview of all time. And he's going to tell everybody he knows how much Shedeur Sanders sucks. And Mike Tomlin's like, great, I don't care. We're drafting him anyway. You can have you can and frequently do have dissenting opinions within the organization. And in fact, a lot of the times, the reason something gets put out there in the public sphere is that it is a dissenting opinion from within the organization, that they don't feel like they're being listened to by the people inside. So in frustration, they share it with people on the outside. That happens all the time. So you can have a reporter say, heard the Steelers didn't like Shedeur Sanders, and Mike Tomlin like, I love this guy, and both those things actually being true.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that came out of today that I actually had seen previously was stuff about George Pickens. Omar Khan saying they love having George and DK. But interestingly enough, Charles Robinson, who from Yahoo covers the league, was on 93.7, talked about it. I guess like Jerry Jones, who, if you're looking for like any type of comp for Pittsburgh sports fans, very Jim Rutherford, and that he'll just like openly talk about potential transactions he's going to make. Was talked about having 2 trades in the works as we lead up to the draft, and there's a lot of speculation, apparently, according to Charles Robinson from around the league, that George Pickens would be a name that makes sense and that he's heard. What is your thought about that? Is that a partner that could make sense? I mean, we obviously talked about the George stuff just as recently as yesterday, but where are we at with that?
I mean, so Omar was asked pretty directly about it and said, we're glad to have George and DK here. I think they're going to be exciting for everyone to watch. Excited to have DK here, but no. That's pretty definitive. So is I have full faith in Kenny Pickett. I just, it doesn't mean that they won't listen. Dallas as a trade partner for George Pickens. I mean,
yeah, people are throwing out that they have pick 44. I feel like that's a bit ambitious.
I mean, look, you look at their depth chart, and I do like Jalen Tolbert as a player. I do like Ryan Flournoy and Kevontae Turpin, but there's no one that is really bringing any amount of fear of a defense other than CeeDee Lamb from that group.
Sure.
And so you can see the idea forming there, right? Of why that might be a good idea. It should be a familiar sounding idea because it's what's happened to George Pickens in Pittsburgh the last year. And it's what would happen to DK Metcalf if they traded George Pickens. Now, pick 44. I mean, you can just draft Jaden Higgins, and I feel like you're just hitting the refresh button on on George Pickens. Like, I mean, not the same player, but like pretty much the same idea. Okay. But like, why wouldn't Dallas just draft Jaden Higgins? Like, what's the impetus for Dallas to be like, no, we don't want to draft a wide receiver with pick 44. What we actually want to do is trade for the Steelers' problem child entering a contract year. Like,
That's the thing.
Why would that be the road that want to go down?
You can see where it makes sense as an immediate fit for a team that needs a second option at receiver. Understand that from a football perspective. And then you have the other parts of this come into play where we're talking about the personality of George Pickens and the stuff that we've seen happen in the past, the fact that he needs a new contract. They know absolutely nothing about this guy. Like, they're going to trade for a guy and pay him when he has not been in their building at all and give this guy a brand new contract. There's just a lot of things to me that would go against it really for anybody. But like, especially when you're talking about giving up that type of compensation to do so, and you're already paying, like, I understand Dallas passes the ball a lot more. That's how they want to operate, I would think. With Dak Prescott making what he's making, CeeDee Lamb making what he's making. So maybe there's the case that they should be a team that pays 2 wide receivers. But like, that to me would also be, at least in some way, raise some eyebrows and propose more questions too, is with CeeDee Lamb making what he is, would they even give another receiver the type of contract that they would need to?
I feel like Dallas would do that just because of how much they do throw the ball. But
that's fair. Yeah.
The other part of this is draft Ted McMillan at 10. 12. Where are they? 10, 12?
12.
12.
Okay,
he might not be there.
Yeah. A lot of smoke. Jacksonville at 5 or Carolina at 8 for him right now, as 48 hours out. It's crazy. It's always fun to see how things change 48 hours before. This is like the day where I feel like a lot of stuff starts to shift just because of the stuff that's getting put out there 48 hours prior. Like the Ashton Genty's like even money now to go in the top 5 because of New England and Jacksonville at 4 and 5. Like I said, the Ted McMillan talk to Jacksonville and Carolina. Like, some people were even saying like that's the floor. Like, even if there's somebody that's in the top 8 might be willing to move back if they feel like they got to jump. Somebody has to jump Carolina to get Ted McMillan. So I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't rule anything out, but that feels far-fetched to me.
In terms of just the idea to George Pickens
trade?
Yeah.
Dallas,
yeah. Okay.
Some other stuff from Tomlin and Khan that I wanted to touch base on, and one of which became news, is Tomlin went out of his way to say he feels like Jaylen Warren can be a starting running back. But then the Steelers announced that Warren had signed his tender, and it's not impossible that they could still negotiate a long-term deal, but that's a strange combination.
You surprised by that
news? Yes, because that's a $5 million contract with no guarantees, and like that's a good starting point to negotiate an extension from, because it's easy to throw in some guaranteed money. You could probably honestly reduce his cap hit this year, add a couple years, and feel happy about it. So I'm a little curious as to why that was only like why he signed it, as opposed to a contract extension. And
I was just say, you would think from the team side, they're probably, happy with doing that for now. But like from his perspective, I'm surprised he would.
Yeah. I would think that the only reason that he would sign that is if they had not offered him a long-term contract, or if they did offer him a long-term contract and he felt like they were very far apart.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I haven't heard anything on the Jaylen
That's
Warren.
some speculation there. Yeah. That's not like anything I've heard, but like those are the ways that makes sense for me.
Sure. Okay. Running back, obviously, position that we've talked about quite a bit and feel like is a strength of this class. Same with defensive line. Did you get the sense based off what Tomlin said about the nose disappearing that it's likely they wouldn't draft a guy like just specific, like they want guys that can move around a little bit, like not specifically just a 0 or 1 tech, like they need to be able to play multiple spots across the line, or what, did you come away feeling differently from that? What do you have to say?
It's not, I don't feel any differently than I have, which is the Steelers don't consider nose tackle to be a position in their team anymore. They barely play their 3-4 base. If you can play nose tackle while you're playing 3 tech, great. That's what they do with Keanu Benton. Finding someone else to do that is certainly a priority, but specifically their ability to play nose tackle is not something they're super concerned with. When you look at their schedule this year, Baltimore is probably the only team they're going to play an appreciable amount of nose tackle against. Like it's not something that is a priority for them really at all. I do think just in general, acquiring more better defensive linemen is a priority, but the ability to specifically play nose tackle is pretty much a non-factor here.
Okay. Did they bring in because Yahya Black? I'll be honest, not super familiar with, but you talked about him being nose tackle. Was he a guy that is more because that to me would seem like a guy they wouldn't even be interested in, but they brought him in for a pre-draft visit.
Yeah, Yahya Black can play.
Okay,
he can play 3 tech.
He was the one name for me that came to mind as somebody that I wasn't for sure could out of the names they showed pre-draft interest.
In fact, he didn't. I mean, Iowa plays a 4-3, so he's coming out of playing 3 tech, even though he's 320.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff.
So I mean, as far as like I think like guys like Deion Walker and Cameron Jackson, who to me are just like only nose tackles, I don't know if I see it.
Yeah, I wasn't interested in Deion Walker to begin with, so not really any trepidations there from me about them not being interested in him. We got $10 here, so we definitely got to get to this one from Lone J23 from YouTube here. I don't know if y'all have looked at it. This is interesting, by the way. This question came from today. I don't know if y'all looked into his film at all, but I think Bo Collins could be a late steal. Second receptions and receiving yards for Notre Dame. Had drop problems at Clemson, but seemed to clean them up. Also really good after the catch. It came out today, something that I don't know if it was you or somebody else sent to our Series Now group chat, that they had actually met with him earlier in the pre-draft process here. What do you think of Bo Collins?
Don't know that much about him. I remember him from Clemson days as being like, I think a relatively highly touted guy that never really kind of put all that together.
Yeah.
And look, that Notre Dame passing offense was a disaster.
That's what I was going to say. My limited time watching him last year, I felt like he was a guy that was certainly hampered by the QB play. But
yeah, I had somebody, I can't remember if it was on Twitter and the YouTube comments, talking about Riley Leonard, and I was just like, no.
And he's like, honestly, like going into last season when he transferred from Duke, because I liked him at Duke. I was like,
before his injury, he was quite good.
Yeah. I was wondering if he could take like a pretty significant leap, but that's true as well. The injury, I'm sure, played into that. But yeah, Notre Dame's passing game last year, he's a guy that I feel like in order to really get a read on, like you mentioned, in terms of the production that he had, I doubt that that's going to tell you much of a story because of what that passing attack is. Like, I feel like you got to go look at the underlying stuff, watch the film, see how he's getting in and out of breaks. Does he understand space? Like, those are the types of things that I'd be looking for with him, just because I don't trust what the numbers are going to tell me about Notre Dame's passing offense.
Yeah. I mean, anybody that you're looking at that part of the draft, and just, and pure, sort of transparency here, Bo Collins is likely to be undrafted. He's 462 on the NFL mock draft database. Anybody you're talking about that range that is 6'3", 202, like that's interesting. Like, you at least have my interest.
Yeah, that's like X receiver build, right? Like, I mean, that's
yeah. Now, look, we've seen plenty of guys over the years come into training camp and look like the statue of David, and then not be able to catch or whatever. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
if the Steelers signed Bo Collins as an undrafted free agent, he would get number 21. You know, they've been given 21. Oh, no, they can't because Kenneth Gainwell got 21. They just gave it out
I
today.
like that a lot.
So 21 as the big long shot receiver.
The Hakeem Butler number. Yeah.
It has ended. It has ended.
Yeah, who are some other guys that have worn? I mean, I know that Hakeem Butler was wearing that in his stint with the Steelers in the offseason.
Like offensive players? Because I feel like 21 is more of a corner number.
Oh, I thought you were saying the big receiver things.
Oh, like the big receiver. Yeah. So last year it was Jeray Jenkins from LSU. Very similar to Bo Collins, giant guy. They had a kid from Duquesne in at rookie camp. Now I can't remember his name. He's like 6'5", and he was wearing it. Yeah.
I feel like that's the tall training camp wide receiver number that isn't going to make the team.
Yeah. Instead, now it's a 5'9" running back. So big change for 21.
That's a big difference. Anyways, we do appreciate the $10 here from Lone J23. Just as we appreciate when people subscribe to SN Plus. Al, do you have a name for me that I could put on the banner here, or could we get one?
See if we got any new ones. I'm not prepared for that. Usually that's an end of the show task here. Is it the end? Man, like the show just goes so fast.
Mm-hmm.
No, but Chad Zivic is the last one. Newest one.
Okay. Well, we still got Chad's getting a bonus day at the bottom then. You guys got to subscribe to SN Plus, but Alan will tell you all about it when he tells you where you can also find him on social media.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. You can also email me. My email address is in my Twitter bio. We got an email yesterday.
This could be an
that is just. I don't even really know how to describe this, Smitty.
Yeah, I replied and said that we got an essay.
David Midish. It has like numbered and lettered paragraphs. Like, we're gonna have to answer his question. Question 3A, 1 and 2. I don't even know. Like, we may need to wait like till after the draft and things slow down and just to dedicate an entire episode to replying to David's questions here. But it's,
David,
my response to you, I feel like David deserves a grade on his essay that he sent to us here. So you can also submit questions by email. Of course, go over to SteelersNow.com, read the words so I can get paid, like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform. That's free, and you don't miss an episode of Steelers Morning Rush, Steelers Afternoon Drive, any of the other stuff we got going on here on the YouTube platform. And we are continuing to grow, man, with the audience. It is at 15,500, and this is a tough one. Myron Bell. 15,540. Myron Boo Bell.
Oh God, who was
40 is a bad number.
It is, but there's a Tony Brooks James. That's who I was thinking of. In 2019, was the kick returner.
2019 is wonderful. Is fruitful mining of random Steelers players.
They had 2 running backs that same season because Kareth White
was also 40. This is a really good answer to this. Blake Martinez was 40 in his very short stint as the Steelers were willing to hire anyone with linebacker in their job description on LinkedIn during the latter part of the 2023 season. That's a good one as well.
Yeah, I'm looking. I decided to look it up. Josh Harris, running back, also wore number 40. We know how glowingly he talks about his time spent with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Josh Harris has made more headlines as a former Steeler than he did as a football player.
Yeah, specifically, it sounds like he had a great relationship with Big Ben.
Yes, that we can say definitively.
Anyways, good stuff. Always appreciate that. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today. A question for a future episode. Maybe 7 questions for a future episode with several bullet points and other things throughout it. Maybe color code it if you want in the comments, if it's possible as well. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure there's a 5-star review and
Smitty,
subscribe.
before we finish, I got something I want to jump into here. In that there was a story I wrote this morning about Aaron Rodgers based on some like stuff from Devontae Adams, who had apparently had a conversation with Mike Silver, and Mike Silver was on Diana Rossini's podcast, which she calls Scoop City, which is a good podcast name. Mm-hmm. And this is not in any way talking trash about the good residents of the Scoop City podcast. But I was writing that story in the middle of the night at like 1 in the morning after my hockey game last night, and after I recorded Locked On with Chris Carter. And so that podcast had been up for like 12 hours at that point. And there were like 4 comments on it. And I was like, oh man, the Steelers Afternoon Drive comment section, like I in that moment, I felt very blessed that we have so many members of our audience that are like so regularly commenting that I was just like, 4 comments. We got 4 comments in like 20 minutes. Like, what's going on here? Our people. Absolutely. I'm not saying our podcast is better. I'm just saying our audience is better.
I'll say our podcast is better.
I'm saying our audience.
You don't have to say it.
That's
our audience is certainly better. I mentioned I was laying there last night. You sent me that email around the same time that I had that thought. Or I'm sorry, you sent me a text screenshot of that email around the same time I had the thought about Shedeur Sanders. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, I'm just excited to get to talk about this yet again another day. So thank you to everybody that watches or listens to this podcast and makes this possible for us to do this literally every single weekday, in season, off season, doesn't matter. We are here right around 6 p.m. every single day, which is by the time you guys are watching or listen to this. So like I said, if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure there's a 5-star review. It's been a while since we saw one of those and we're able to read one. So go and do that. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.